I like the new direction of the MCU. For me, I've always had a consistent problem with Marvel releasing half-baked genre films that are carried by the charisma and character development of the leads. I found this problem most significant after Age of Ultron. Marvel before that was hit or miss, but in a very weird way. Please don't make me talk about it. Dear God, don't make me talk about it. Thor Ragnarok, Doctor Strange, Black Panther, Spider-Man Homecoming, and Ant-Man. These films are relatively fine for the most part. Some I like a bit more than others, but they all share the aspect that I started this video off with. By this point in the MCU, the typical Marvel humor charm has worn off. Thor Ragnarok, if it weren't dripping in this bland humor, would be absolutely incredible. I fucking love the character arc of Thor. The talk he has with Odin is, just perfect. But now, we are in a new phase of Marvel. Phase 4. We're getting less jokes, more style, and bold decisions. And I absolutely love it. There is nothing wrong with humor, and this new phase isn't devoid of humor, not in the slightest. But the humor has been retooled, and it's much more effective. WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and Loki are all stylistically, thematically, and creatively bolder than all of Phase 3 combined. Which I do have to specify, I really like some of the movies in Phase 3, especially Guardians 2 and Infinity War. Here's the thing, just because I love the new direction of Marvel, the direction of Phase 4, doesn't mean I love every single product. I have significant problems with Shang-Chi, a movie I've already covered, but I'd rather watch Shang-Chi 1,000 times over one Homecoming, even if I think Homecoming is a stronger film. Shang-Chi is bold and different, and it doesn't work for me. But I love the attempt by director Destin Cretton. This leads me to Eternals, the newest Marvel Studios film directed by Chloe Zhao and starring Gemma Chan, Richard Madden, and the person I've dedicated my face to being their exclusive chair, Angelina Jolie. Eternals, just like Shang-Chi, is bold, but it ultimately just doesn't work for me. It's actually kinda bad. Spoilers ahead for Eternals, the movie that feels like it's been running for a literal eternity by the end of the second act. Eternals has a significant problem of direction. I'm somewhat familiar with Chloe Zhao's previous work, but not the movie everyone is probably expecting that I've watched. I did not see Nomadland, just because I haven't got around to it. There's really no other reason besides that. I honestly plan to watch it pretty soon. The movie I have seen by her is called The Writer, and it's interesting to say the least. The movie is incredibly authentic, and I did some research after I watched the film in 2018. It's about a recovering cowboy who got injured and is trying to find his way back. Simple shit. Stuff we've seen before, right? Absolutely not. It's filmed with a real fucking cowboy, and he hasn't acted since the movie released or before it released. The majority of the actors are real people with simple everyday jobs. They aren't actors, and it makes for a unique cinematic experience. What works for The Writer would not work for Eternals. Chloe obviously couldn't get an actual immortal space being doing the work of God. I mean, Chloe tried. She asked me a couple of years ago, but my schedule was filled up at the time. I think something that works for The Writer that could work for Eternals is having a... What do you call it? A fucking protagonist. You know, like an actual protagonist. I'm obviously being hyperbolic here. The movie does have a protagonist. It's Gemma Chan, or at least she's the closest thing we have to a protagonist. But here's the thing. She feels so incredibly passive. She makes one notable decision in the movie, and that's the decision to save Earth because it's a place she loves. Which we kinda get to see that she loves Earth, but it's a small amount of very brief moments and it's few and far between. Protagonists are great when they get to make choices and see consequences. Whether those consequences are good or bad, that's up to the film. But it's because they make those choices they are so compelling. No one wants to see everything just happen to the protagonist or the other characters around the protagonist making the decision for them. Frodo ultimately makes the decision to aid Gandalf, even if Gandalf had to convince him a bit. Beowulf in his old age makes the decision to slay the dragon, and Paul Atreides makes the decision to be the sexiest tyrant of Arrakis. What are the consequences of these actions? The Eye of Sauron is destroyed. Beowulf eats shit and dies, and Arrakis is ruled by an immortal sandworm-human hybrid that creates clones of Jason Momoa. The last one is not a joke. God Emperor of Dune is fucking wild, man. Please adapt it into a film, you sniveling cowards over at Warner Bros. It would be the most metal shit of all time. Gemma Chan's consequence for her choice is that her ex-boyfriend turns on her and her friends. This isn't a bad quality consequence, to be honest. It's not inherently bad writing, but it's the only time that I can remember that we see our protagonist face a negative or positive consequence for her actions. She barely feels like the lead. She only feels like the lead because she's chosen as the leader by dead Salma Hayek. She never really acts like a leader. My friend Chris made an interesting point on how this could be because Eternals is actually a critique on leadership, but we both agree that the film doesn't commit to this idea hard enough if that's really the case. The film needed to be more thematically potent, but also Gemma Chan's character had to be more active in influencing the plot and direction of the group as a whole, even if the critique of leadership was the thematic idea that Chloe Zhao was going for. Which, I have to say, we are definitely grasping for straws with this theory in order to give her some benefit of the doubt. Speaking of group, I do not like how Chloe Zhao handled the group dynamic here. Most of the characters in the group were interesting conceptually, but handled weirdly, so they didn't quite work. Eternals found a consistent problem of having characters change off screen, and then having that be most of the development for that character. We see these characters in flashbacks periodically, but we don't get to see the actual change of character motivation, personality, or goals take place on screen. This can work great for a few characters or if done a few times, but when we are constantly jumping back and forth, showing snapshots of characters and not the gradual development on screen, that development means nothing. How am I supposed to attach myself to the journey of these characters when I don't get to see the actual fucking journey, dude? Suicide Squad, directed by James Gunn, is a perfect example of how to handle a group movie that isn't an event film. Hell, even Guardians of the Galaxy by James Gunn is a perfect example of how to handle a group movie that isn't an event film. Honestly, just let James Gunn direct all of these movies. That's the simple solution. In Suicide Squad, we have the group assembled within the first 30 or so minutes of the film, and for the rest of the movie, they're all together. This allows us to see the starting point of these characters as well as the end point of these characters, exactly like Eternals does. And we even get a couple of flashback scenes like Eternals does to provide additional context. What's the difference though, class? If you guessed that Suicide Squad bothered to show the middle point of these characters' journey, then you win 2 free bathroom passes so you don't shit your pants in my classroom. The middle is the meat of the story, the meat of your character arc. I want to see that. I wanted to see how Brian Tyree Henry's character became disillusioned with humanity over the course of the film, rather than getting one of the goofiest flashback scenes I've ever seen. Some other things I noticed included Chloe Zhao's visual style just not working here. I haven't seen Nomadland, but I've seen stills, and I've seen the writer, and she clearly has an affinity for natural, flat, and dull backgrounds. With her other films, she's able to make those backgrounds work. At least in the case of the writer, it worked for me. I obviously can't speak on Nomadland, but because the natural flat cinematography style doesn't quite fit for Eternals, it results in this being one of the worst looking Marvel movies. There are some really cool landscape shots, especially in the final act with the birthing of the Celestial, but overall it's really flat and it doesn't fit. I did like Kumail's character and his cameraman. I think he's one of the few characters we get to see grow on screen, but his development is also done in a way that doesn't feel cheap or unearned. He and his cameraman inject some much needed life into this film without turning it into Thor 2 Kat Dennings cringe comedy. I also liked Gilgamesh, mainly because I'm studying World Civ right now and seeing the Epic of Gilgamesh get told on screen was kind of neato. Fuck it, I'm saying it. The coolest and most interesting parts of Eternals was when they were doing shit in history. We got to see the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. We didn't get to see any city-states in Mesopotamia, but we did get some fun little Mesopotamia tribe action, and we even got to see the Gupta Empire. Fun fact, India has rarely been unified throughout ancient and early medieval history. The Guptas ruled during the 300s until I believe the 500s or early 600s, and they were also the second Indian Empire after the Mauryans. Just want to thank my professor Big Man Kurt for teaching me that. You are truly a party rocker. Lastly, the twist is fine, I guess. I wish Icarus was more dynamic in the first and second act, so this twist would actually be more impactful, but it does make Icarus an interesting character after about 90 plus minutes of movie, so I guess I'll take the victory. Having Sprite join Icarus felt incredibly contrived because I didn't buy her being in love with Icarus or having a reason besides that to join him. Her being in love with him felt incredibly tacked on because it wasn't explored hardly or even in an interesting way when it was shown. Also, why are the deviants here, man? Like, I get why they're here, I guess in theory, they're a distraction, but honestly they don't need to be in the film after the initial exposition or even after the first act. The decision to have one of the deviants be a sentient villain is some A-tier shitposting by Chloe Zhao. It's such a baffling decision that I refuse to believe that she actually put it in the movie. I've been trying to gaslight myself for the past week into believing that I made up Crow. That's his name, by the way. The deviant villain actually has a name. If you knew that without looking it up, you have real-life hacks. You found the Konami code to life. Overall, I thought Eternals was a bad film, but it still definitely feels like a film, a Chloe Zhao film. And I have to admit, I really appreciate that. Even if I have significant problems with the character and direction, I respect that there is blatant direction here. Just like with Shang-Chi, I'd rather watch Eternals 100 times before I watch Doctor Strange even once. And I think Doctor Strange is a better movie. Eternals is a 3 out of 10. It's a bad movie. I hope you liked the video, and if you did, please leave a like and a comment. What were your thoughts on Eternals? I'd honestly like to know. If you liked the movie, let me know. If you didn't like it, let me know. I just kind of want to gauge where you guys are. But if you do want Thena to do nasty things to you, don't tell me. We're already married. It's gonna be kind of weird. I hope you all have a great day. Subscribe, hit the bell, and farewell.